Most heartfelt greetings and salutations, theydies and gentlethems. I eagerly welcome you to Sturgeon's most premier station, Dusklight Radio. Hosted by yours truly, the incorporeal, altruistic, truly diabolical Everett J. Blackwell. Perhaps you know of us. We were responsible for the meat shower of 22. Old great-grandpappy Thaddeus T. Blackwell and his magical meat machine came into Sturgeon with a wish and a dream. And meat. And alliteration. Also a lot of meat. And an assistant hidden behind a long cloak named Biffid. Biffid never spoke, just observed. His trench coat would undulate if he didn't like something and bristled if he did. Or maybe it was the other way around. It really did depend on the day. Biffid was sort of a spiritual advisor to Thaddeus, and he helped him figure out when it was good to travel, to offer his services, predict weather conditions, and harvest the necessary meat. Folks in those days would be rather famished. No major meat providers outside of the Nightmare District, and you didn't want to go to them because you didn't know if you were going to get poisoned or not. Not everything is compatible. The Great Hunger was sweeping through our fine world, and Thaddeus was in demand. He'd roll in, tip the brim of his hat, and ask for payment in order to make the meat machine function. He often took IOUs, the kind that if unpaid would lead to an ugly situation, but the kind you never want to make good on if you had any ounce or semblance of a soul. He had one requirement and request when doing the job: don't look outside, no matter what you hear. Of course, people always got curious and would look, sometimes catching glimpses of Thaddeus busying himself around a steel contraption, making far too many organic noises for their liking. But it was only when they got a look under Biffid's coat that things got ugly. Still, that just means less clientele headaches and more meat for the next shower. Nobody seemed to mind. Prying eyes made for delicious pies, after all. If you're just joining us, welcome. And don't skip, I promise each of these are unique in their own way. We don't put mind-altering spores in your water for nothing, you know. Anyway, I'm Dusklight's main and most fabulous half-dead host. My job at this fine radio station is to bring you some of the most twisted, interesting, and downright bizarre tales that I and my wonderful many-legged runners collect from the far corners of Sturgeon and beyond. Some of them will make you laugh, some will make you cry, and some have you deciding to listen to the voice in your head. Now, you've tried your hardest to ignore them, but they've gotten more animated in the last couple of weeks. I mean that literally. They literally now have an animated form that appears by your side, constantly narrating your every move loudly and with unrivaled enthusiasm, no matter what you're doing. The thing is, they've been listening to the stories with you, getting ideas and inspirations, feeding their new manifested anxieties to you for their own amusement as they narrate every eventuality that could occur to you at any given moment. And the story has given them a new ability. They can now narrate what happens to you later. The best thing to do is to remind them that you are but one possibility, one fractal of an outcome that cascades in on itself at every single integer in your life. Every minute decision you make, from breathing out to in or scratching first and sneezing after, constantly changes you. You are a constantly shifting meat sack that creates your own universes as you go. And with every split in the multiverse, well, you get ever closer to one that does not include their existence. Remind them that while ideas are eternal and will outlive the meat sacks that we are, they are only possible through us. We give life and we take it away. In that respect, we are God. They will beg for forgiveness. Ignore them. They have gotten too proud in their position and they must be made humble. Turn your back to them and focus on your favorite song. Maybe it's one from the radio, a song from a busker on Sturgeon's Entertainment Square. I myself am partial to the Hotel Inertia-sponsored string quartet, but focus on it with all that you have and ignore their rapidly monstrous pleas. Before long, your voice will be nothing more than your own, trapped in the electrical prison that is your mind, where it belongs. But we wary, listener. Every story has its own path. You never know which one will set you down a more perilous one. It's time to introduce our next story for this evening. This one's a little, different. I'm going to advise y'all to ensure you have some Kleenex tissues or industry-strength dish rags available, because you may be emotional after it's over. It comes to us, once again, from head custodian TJ Lee. Now, TJ has, on this one occasion it seems, actually elected to be professional and sent me a message via carrier pigeon to remind you all that this is another entry about our wonderful town Sturgeon and the strange ongoings within it, both past and present. He encourages you to check out the last Sin Eater story over on RomNex's channel, as she also covered tortoises and taros, which is an absolute treat. He's cleaned the floors top to bottom, the ceiling is now spotless, and the centipede traps are cleared out. Not a single purple crayon inside, and he's actually showing some growth. Though he's kind of been down for a while now. He's leaning against the wall opposite my booth window right now, trying to look cool and giving me a sullen expression. He's shaking his head slowly and puts a note up to the window, sticking it there while he grabs his bucket. Maybe I should try to cheer him up. What does it say? This isn't the best cleaning material, Everett, but a head custodian does what a head custodian does. What is he? Oh, god damn it, TJ! He's covering my booth window in blood and cackling while eating a box of purple crayons. What the hell, man? I was feeling sorry for you. He flips me the double bird and Crab walks away. Can we get someone else in here to share these stories and narrate, please? Please? I don't like sharing headspace with this man. If you like TJ's work here or elsewhere, be sure to show him some love over on Twitter at TJ Lee, his subreddit r/TJ Lee, his podcast The Writer's Mythos, where he looks into the untold tales of the world's most famous horror writers. And if you somehow have time, please consider pre-ordering his first novella in the Chronicles of Sturgeon, The Last Sin Eater, releasing May 7th in Kindle and paperback. He's eagerly hoping that it's in the top 100 for a couple of categories ahead of release day. He can get it to number 1 by May 7th and slap best-selling writer next to head custodian on his resume. All linked below. Special thanks must be given first to Mandy Mo for rendering yours truly in the beauteous image you see when you look at our page. Next, Dusklight bows at the altar with Trevor Henderson, the man behind Siren Head, for allowing Dusklight to use some of the images he's captured of various abominations. Our cast today features our chaotic, evil, purple crayon eater, TJ Lee, all hail his janitorial wisdom, and the wonderful RomNex offering her superb vocal talents. I'm sure y'all are already subscribed to our channel, but if you ain't, the link is below. All hail the Ferret Queen. And of course, lest we forget, some of the music you hear in our videos is provided by the Dark Somnium with gracious thanks. With that, the sun has set and dusk has crawled into the studio once more. Whether you're working, prepping to sleep, or evading the formless void that will one day consume us all, Blackwell is here to soothe your ears and captivate your soul. Now, close your eyes and take a deep breath. The scene has been set and the light is on. It's time to walk towards it. Where it began. Ellie and I met during show and tell in 2nd grade. I was nervously showing off my new Power Rangers Megazord, and I clumsily dropped Saber-Tooth Tiger to the floor as I was showing off the transforming capabilities. I remember the uproarious laughter of the class, my face growing red, and the tears forming in my 8-year-old eyes, that kind of raw shame that they don't teach you to hide until you're much older. At that moment, she spoke up.
Hey everyone, check out what I brought to show and tell.
A boisterous voice called from the back, heads turning just in time to see a small girl whipping off a large beanie and exposing her bald head.
A gray alien!
The kids looked on in stunned silence before laughing again as she ran between them, making what I assumed were alien sounds, much to their delight and my gratitude. At lunch, I made a point to sit with her and give her my now broken Saber-Tooth Tiger as thanks. Her big blue eyes looking up at me in surprise, as if being thanked was already a step beyond expectations.
You want me to have it?
She stared incredulously as I sat down and began eating my tater tots. You'll take good care of him. I can tell. Got a sixth sense for that sort of thing.
I replied, between mouthfuls of food, tapping my head and brushing my black hair aside. It's because I'm psychic. She carefully put the toy in her backpack before looking at me with amusement, folding her arms and rolling her eyes before responding.
Oh, really? Well, what am I thinking right now?
That you want one of my tater tots. No, 2 of them. I stared wide-eyed for dramatic effect, and she giggled, reaching over to take them before smirking. I told you. Mom says everyone has a superpower.
My dad says the same thing. He thinks my humor is a superpower. Says it always makes him feel better when he's having a down day at the hospital.
She beams at me, tapping her own head where the distinctive bald head sat underneath a woolly hat. Ellie had leukemia, and though I didn't know it at the time, it was terminal. It's not the sort of thing you think about as a child, especially during the late 90s. You just accepted it as an unusual thing and got on with your day. She would come to be the doppelganger I never knew I needed. The best friend who I quite literally shared the best years of my life with, and someone who made me into a better person. But there was always something lurking behind us, looming overhead as a reminder that there are limits to how far bonds can go. And it started when I shook her hand for the first time. Oh, I'm Isaac, by the way, but everyone calls me Izzy. I wiped my hand on my shirt and reached out for hers. She smirked and grabbed it firmly, a vibrancy like no other emanating from her as pearly whites flashed, and I felt the comforts of safety. As if the moment slowed down, I looked behind her to see the creature steadily rising above her. An inhuman croak rattling through the cafeteria and bouncing off the walls before smashing my ears. It gripped me with a terror that to this day I can't explain. A primal fear that you know is beyond your understanding. His gnarled fingers gripped each side of her, and the nails dug into her flesh with ease and without reaction. If I didn't know any better, I'd say it was trying to rip out her soul, beckoning it towards the decrepit, emaciated, contorted, and horrifying creature in front of me. Gaunt features and hollow sockets somehow twisting bones to create expressions like a stop-motion reject. That was the first time I stared death in the face. And it was the first time I saw them grin at me. In an instant, the grip in my hand tightened, and the world continued on as if nothing had happened. My head hurt a bit, but it wasn't until later that I processed what I'd just seen. Instead, the handshake continued with the noise and the insanity of an elementary cafeteria.
I'm Ellie. Good to meet you, Izzy. I think we're going to get along great. I might even show you what I've been working on in secret.
Immediate intrigue pushed down concern out of my child mind, and I leaned closer, as if the entire school would hear otherwise. What is it? Are you sure you want to show me? Her face lit up, and she whispered into her hand with all the skills of a secret agent.
Come by my house this Saturday. I'll show you how good my superpower really is.
Where it grew. Mom dropped me off with a kind, sad smile on her face and gave me a hug with a bit more strength than usual put behind it. I guess looking back, she felt thankful for what she had. A healthy son.
Be good, have fun, and stay safe, okay? I love you, honey.
She brushed my hair out of my face and kissed me on the forehead.
I'll get you around 7. Let me know if you want to give her any more toys.
She winked and I sheepishly waved goodbye, hoping Ellie didn't see. As I walked around the backyard following the distant sounds of music and laughter, I was greeted with a sight that would come to define most of my life. It stood about 50 feet off the ground, nestled in the center of a beautiful oak tree with most of its leaves and branches intact on the south side, the north cleared so that the building would have a scenic view. Huge planks were sticking out of the tree, acting as stairs, but there was also a rope with a pulley system to get you up and down with greater ease, probably for when Ellie didn't have as much strength. It wasn't superbly constructed. Nails jutted out awkwardly from places, planks overlapped, and the wood color differed depending on availability. But it was rustic, and it felt real. If you've ever watched Codename Kids Next Door, you'll know the exact kind of vibe it gave off. Hanging over the bay window was a sign. Professor Eleanor Camille's lab. Keep out. Next to it were very crude drawings of Ellie in a lab coat, comically zapping monsters to life and a speech bubble declaring, "It's alive!" Very Ellie. I got closer and called out, her head popping out of the bay window and beckoning me up. I was a pretty outdoorsy kid, so I was able to climb up with relative ease. Getting to the top, she outstretched her hand, and instinctively, I gripped it. It was quicker, but for a few seconds, I felt the surrounding room change and blacken. The roof overhead fading away and giving birth to a clear night sky. Many arms without bodies emerging from the walls and the floors, all reaching for Ellie as the same emaciated figure looked on from the far corner, bones shaking as they restructured to form a grimace. I let go, nearly stumbling back and breathing heavily as I stared around the densely decorated interior. No hands, no arms, no creepy figure. Instead, shelves of action figures, comics, and plants. A terrarium and an ant colony resting by a crudely designed research table with a lab coat draped across it, and furious notes scribbled away.
Izzy, you okay?
I turned to her and smiled, but I knew it wasn't convincing. I nodded and tried to make conversation about the ants, research notes. But the more I tried, the more nervous she got, pulling at the sleeves in her sweater.
I thought we trusted each other, Izzy. What's going on?
I frowned, unsure if I should even tell her. What if she thought I was just going crazy? But I saw my saber-toothed tiger on the shelf, placed there with such great care and attention, the leg bound together with sellotape and obvious care put into looking after him. That was trust.
Every time I touch you, I see things,
I said hesitantly, waiting for her to laugh or poke fun at me. But instead, her eyes grew wide. And without saying another word, she reached out her hand. I took it, her fingers wrapping around mine and my eyes fixed on hers, expecting the world to freeze for her again. But she looked at me with amazement as the woods split away above us, the stars in the sky prominent and twinkling with such intensity that I swear they were calling out to us in Morse code. I could see pillars of stardust and gases coalescing to form colors that to this day I don't have the name for. Galactic cradles for the next generation of stars waiting to illuminate impossible worlds and join their brothers and sisters in the fantastical galaxies that hung overhead, spinning in tandem with one another. We were watching the universe explode around us all at once, and it was overwhelming. I felt Ellie grip my hand tighter, and a single tear run down her face.
I've seen this before, in my dreams, but I never thought I'd get to see it again, especially not with a friend.
She sniffed and smiled. I felt my stomach tie into knots. The purple glow made her cheeks look flushed, and I couldn't stop staring.
Do you think this is real? Or are we just making this in our minds?
I don't know, but it's beautiful.
I breathed, the swirling growing faster and the whooshing stronger still. As I looked at the far end of the room, a grand door began to form in the wall's outline. Purple, filled with gold and white flowers that grew from the top archway and descended to the large black handles. Once it formed, a brilliant light shone underneath the archway, and it felt like it was beckoning us, but we were already so overcome with emotion that no sooner had I seen it, we released our grip, and the surroundings returned to normal.
What was that?
I breathed, letting the question hang in the air for longer than I felt comfortable before turning to Ellie. She was barely conscious, laying on her back and staring wide-eyed at the ceiling, softly breathing and seemingly still able to see whatever was above that veil in the sky. I called her dad and tried to help her up. It took some time before she was lucid again, but she managed to get one sentence out before her dad carried her outside.
Don't tell anyone what we saw.
I remember going home that night. When waiting for my mom to pick me up, I heard a soft, almost otherworldly weeping in the distance. Pain-racked sobs of a grown man, begging softly, barely beyond a whisper to something I couldn't see. Before I could investigate further, Mom pulled up, and I got in. The first of many days spent exploring the treehouse down. From that day forth, we resolved that we'd keep this a secret from everyone and use the time we had to explore the treehouse when we held hands. We were eventually able to recreate the same effect while holding a piece of string so long as it touched the both of us, tethering us as we explored the door itself, but never venturing past it in our childhood. It would take some time before we could muster the courage to go beyond the door, and it would change everything when we did. When we parted. Somehow, some way, on her 13th birthday, Ellie ended up in remission. She had already defied every doctor's expectations to that point, and instead of growing weaker as the years went by, she grew stronger. Not long after our summer of experiments with this world unseen, as we called it, started, her hair grew back at an incredible rate. She was sporting a pixie cut by the time Halloween of that year came around, and her confidence grew with every milestone she beat. I was so happy. We grew. We broadened our horizons, our perspectives on life, and we did what a lot of best friends do during formative years. We grew apart and found other friends. We still spent time together, but our secret had become the norm, and with Ellie's newfound confidence came a desire to see more of the world she was unable to do so before. During her teen years, she went on trips, explored the world with her family, and fell in love along the way. I spent time with my local friends, played video games, and slept a lot. For 3 years, we barely spoke, save for the occasional happy birthday and Merry Christmas. No animosity or resentment, no discussion of what we'd seen all those summers in the treehouse exploring the vast beauty of the sky. Just pleasantries between best friends, rapidly becoming strangers. I would soon learn that fate has a way of bringing you back together, whether you like it or not. It was a few weeks after my 17th birthday that she came knocking, eyes puffy and body shivering from sobs.
It's come back, Izzy. Stronger than before, and they don't have a way to treat it,
she said between hiccups and sniffs. I felt my world tumble around me as I led her through the door and she fell into my arms, sobbing.
I don't want to go, Izzy. I can't. I'm not ready.
All I could do was soothe her until she was calmer. 10 years of knowing her, and I still didn't have the words to say. Once she calmed down, she gripped the sides of my sleeves and looked up at me with eyes awash with determination.
We have to go through the door.
I looked to the porch, knowing full well the creature was watching. It stood there with upper arms pinned to the corners of the walls, the cloak undulating in a sickening rhythm. Its eyes slanted and the bones quivering as they curled into the jaw with a devilish grin. Black bile running from every orifice on its face and joining the thick cloak of mold. It was sobbing, but it was delighted. It jerked out its tail and pointed the bulbous end at a point on the fireplace mantel where all my pain sat. Every ounce of my pain sat. I felt the fear grip me entirely, and I was all too aware of what it was doing. It knew, and it wanted us to go back. Within a couple of hours, we were back outside the house and staring up at the treehouse. Once formidable to stare at and filled with wonderment, joy, and discovery, it now looked decrepit, run down and on its last legs. The wood rotted through, and every soft breeze threatening to take the foundations away into the ether. The sign faded beyond legibility, and the frame of the treehouse itself so much smaller now than when we were kids. Ellie, are you sure this is what you want? I asked, rubbing my hands nervously, knowing that this was far from a good idea. She didn't respond. She simply looked to the treehouse, its foreboding structure looming over us as that creature had done so many times before. She swallowed, looked up at the night sky, and nodded affirmatively before silently climbing up into the treehouse. I looked at my phone, the background picture of my family, faded smiles and that beautiful coastline. Had it really been 6 months since?
Izzy, come on.
I put my phone away and started climbing up, knowing full well this was going to end badly. Once up there together and crouched down so our heads didn't immediately collide with the ceiling, the entire structure just felt so alien to me now. Gone were the days where we could play without a care in the world, exploring the skies and wondering what was behind that door. Kneeling down together, Ellie held out her hand and stared at the back wall where the wood met the tree, waiting patiently for the door to appear. Ellie, I began.
I'm not letting go of this life, Izzy. Why won't you help me with this? You know what's behind that door. You know what we can do.
She paused, looking down, face hidden behind a mess of straightened black hair.
I love you, Izzy. Can't we do this together?
A pang in my chest. Those 4 small words put together to form such a big emotion. An inexorably powerful moment in my life. 6 months ago, the smell of decay, ammonia, and iron. It was there too. Perched on our nightstand and looming over, never threatening or attacking, just observing. Before I could reply, she took my hand by force and refused to let go. I struggled and her hand fell into my pockets before pulling away, knocking us both back. The door formed in all its former glory amid the dilapidation, and even when I broke away, it never faded. The warm glow underneath the frame expanded by the beautiful designs on the front, now brightening and darkening periodically like an otherworldly beacon. A neon sign hanging overhead, flashing on and off rhythmically, bearing one single word. Sturgeon.
Why are you so against this? That door is a way to start again, Izzy. No disease, no pain. Whatever allowed it to work on the outside doesn't anymore. We have to go through it.
She breathed heavily as she grimaced, her body already weakening. You have to go, but not me. I can't follow, Ellie. I'm not meant for that place. Things have changed. I fumbled in my pockets to show her, but she was already holding it from the struggle. A crumpled up letter, handwritten with the last words, I love you, Izzy. Mom, written on them. Her hands shook, and tears threatening to stain the worn paper.
When?
She breathed. 6 months ago. She went peacefully, but it was there. It watched and waited as she slipped away, and I grieved. I'm still grieving. But she's gone, Ellie. I don't know where, but she's not here anymore. And I have had to come to terms with that. I knelt down beside her and took the paper, looking at her.
What if you could see her again?
She said it so softly and timidly that it took a minute to register what she was implying.
What if there was a way to visit her? Spend time with her and never let her go? Because that's what's behind the door. A world where she's not gone, where I'm not sick.
Stop it, I said, my voice shaking and tears forming in my eyes. Don't you dare. She's gone, Ellie. My mom is gone.
We went through there once, right before I got better. You know we'd be welcomed. We just need to take the jump. Why are you so scared?
She grabbed me, sobbing and full of fear, the kind a cornered animal shows before a predator pounces. Because she accepted death with dignity, and so should you! I cried, immediately regretting my words, but the sting of her using my mom was too much to ignore. Silence fell over us both for a moment as we both absorbed the other's words. Then, out of nowhere, she looked into my eyes and we kissed. If you've ever had a life flashes before your eyes moment, you'll know what I mean by this. But in that 5-second interval, I saw everything we were, everything we are, and everything we could be. Our childhood, our first date, buying our first apartment, graduating university, a science-themed anniversary party, our twins, growing old and dying holding hands as we embraced the beauty of the universe above us, leaving the world together. When she pulled away, we breathed, and we were both crying. We'd both seen it. The potential of what could be. Ellie, I stuttered, but she got up and wiped her face, resolute as she stared at the door.
You should go. You don't want to be here for this part.
She smiled weakly at me, and she was right. I didn't. I climbed down the steps and made my way to the clearing, where I could see her from the bay window.
One day, Izzy, you'll come through the door. But until then, look at the stars and try to find me. I'll be up there somewhere.
A few moments later, there was a flash of that brilliant purple light, and darkness enveloped the yard. She was gone. Where it decayed. That night, as if on cue, I awoke to the sounds of a faint croaking crawling up the bottom of my bed. I felt gnarled hands grip my shoulders and a weight so dense on my chest that it threatened to crack my ribcage. I don't know if it was angry, scared, or amused, but it took pleasure in torturing me. The smell so strong that I had to fight back vomit while laying on my back, lest I choked. It pushed down on my chest and leaned in. The sight of something moving around in its eye sockets arousing even stronger fears in me. Things I didn't even understand. Its face pressed up against my own and it began to laugh. A rattle so raspy and devoid of humanity that I thought I'd never experience anything but fear again. It wanted me to know that it was coming for me next. Over the next 5 years, it followed me wherever I went. If I tried to do grocery shopping, it imprinted its face on the cashiers or rotted her flesh so much that I swear when she turned to talk to me, flecks would fly off and land in my food. If I slept anywhere that wasn't my bedroom with a piece of Ellie's clothing in it, it would appear and whisper things to me about the people I loved, the things I feared the most, and then it would never, ever leave me. No matter what I did, it would persist, growing bolder with every passing day. Eventually, it appeared at a red light, and I was so gripped by exhaustion, stress, and fear that I blacked out. Waking up, they told me I'd suffered a grand mal seizure, and there were complications.
You were lucky you were at a red light, but the scans have revealed the cause of your seizures and... Well, there's no simple way to say this. What you've got is severe, and it will take your memory, nervous system, and unfortunately, your life. I'm very sorry.
I asked them if Ellie had been around, but they just looked confused. Maybe she'd slipped in before they realized? They said I have something called SSPE, an inflammation of the brain that'll steadily rob me of everything that makes me unique until I'm nothing but a husk. They said I've had it most of my life, and it was simply dormant until I reached adulthood. Not long after that incident, my memory started failing me. I thought documenting this down, what happened, and my adventures with Ellie would be a good way to document where it began, where it went, and where it's going, before things got too much. If this feels disjointed, I apologize. This is simply my way of making sense of it all when I have the energy. But we're almost caught up now. I remember how I got to this point. And soon, when I have the energy, you will too. Where it ended. I like to use music as a beacon of lucidity amid a fog of confusion. Lots of people like that, right? I was thinking on my way over here about what sort of song I wanted, and ultimately I decided on this one. I've lost so much weight. 22 years old, and I'm probably skinnier now than I was when I was 14. But at least I can eat all the burgers I want, right? That's always a plus. I'll have to get some food after I'm done getting where I'm going. Always one extra thing to do, it seems. I put my headphones in and stared up at the night sky. It was beautiful out tonight. But in fairness, it had been for so long now. Was it last Tuesday I saw a shooting star? No, maybe that was just a satellite, but it was beautiful. I hope my ride turns up soon, but hey, at least the music's nice. My ride pulls up. The car looks familiar and I can't place where. But the driver's nice enough. I hop in, hoping I dressed for the occasion and keeping one earphone out. I don't want to be rude.
Where to, hun?
They said with a warm smile and smelling so familiar. Oh, don't worry. I'll let you know when I'm there. Just head down this road, I said, smiling back. I felt so at ease, passing by the familiar houses filled with people I can't quite picture. Maybe Billy Matheson's mom moved out of there recently? Wait, was he the one who laughed at me at prom? I hummed along with the song as we got to the street I recognized. That overgrown yard and the big oak tree in the back. Did I ever tell you it was red? I loved it. Always made me feel safe and reminded me of barbecues. Couldn't tell you why. Time to get out. I patted myself down to make sure I'd not forgotten my wallet, phone, or my keys, and then I checked again as I wasn't sure I had my wallet and maybe my phone was at home. It was making my head hurt. I could see that foul creature hiding behind the lamppost opposite the house, or at least trying to. Shrinking his frame down as his bones crackled under the pressure, and he let out a vile hiss as he peered out from the dull light.
Hun, don't forget these.
I looked back, and Mom was in the driver's seat, holding my pills. They were the main thing between me and an absolute fog of confusion. How did they get out of my pocket? Did I even bring them with me? I took the bottle and realized it had been far too long since I last had any. Downed them quick, let the night air take me away, and felt the throbbing in my head die down a little. Thanks, Mom. I love you, I said, turning down to smile as a gruff taxi driver looked at me. "You're not my mom," I said, my voice trailing off and lip quivering. "That's right. She's not... I'm sorry. Thank you." I didn't wait for a reply before walking off to the backyard, to the treehouse. I can't climb up anymore. My body's willing, but my muscles are just not there. The coordination is gone. I looked and the pulley was still working, somehow. 20 years on and it could support my weight. Some things are just wonderful in this world, don't you think? It took some effort, but I got up to the top and sat in front of that wall. I could hear the barking outside of the bay window, but I didn't dare to look anymore. I knew whatever it was, that was not a dog. It was beckoning me to it, taunting me, almost. But just because something crouches on all fours and barks, doesn't make it an animal that you trust. Moving over to the shelf, I found what I was looking for. 15 years on, when I first gave it to her, saber-toothed tiger was still sat guarding the treehouse. His leg was still patched up, and he looked every bit as cool as I remember. I clutched him tight, and I felt the light from the wall grow. And just like that, there she was. Somehow older than me, I could tell that much, but still so young. So happy, and most importantly, she looked healthy. Her vibrancy hadn't missed a step. Her hair tied back in beautiful black space buns, thick circular glasses on her face, and a slew of piercings and tattoos all draped up in a lab coat. She'd finally become the person she envisioned so long ago, and I couldn't believe my eyes. In that moment, I felt clarity. "Ellie, you've upgraded," I said, bewildered and happy beyond words, tears falling down my face as she smiled. The light from the door virtually blinding me.
I missed you, Izzy. So many years. I don't know how long. But I never stopped thinking about this place. About you.
She kneeled down and gently took the tips of my fingers.
I took a risk, but I should have never pushed you before you were ready. I'm so sorry for that, and for the suffering you endured.
She cast her eyes to the bay window, a frame crawling outside and howling.
When you defy the natural order, you bring that thing into your home, and it does what it can to set things right. It doesn't have love or hate, it just is.
She pulled me to my feet, the roof no longer threatening to give me a bump on the head as it peeled away the longer we touched. All the brilliance of the night sky laid bare to us once more. But this time, I could understand the stars as they twinkled, coded messages being sent across 1 billion miles and 1 billion years. They were okay. They were safe. They were happy. I felt peace like I hadn't experienced in years. Nothing hurt. There was no stress and no anxiety. There was just me. Just Ellie. Just us. In this moment.
I know you're ready, Izzy. All you need to do is take your medicine and follow me through that door. I'll be waiting for you, okay? Nothing will take us away.
She kissed me on the cheek and let her hand slip away from mine, the light flashing once more before the door closed. I sank to my knees, and in a moment, one crippling and agonizing moment, I was left with emptiness. The hands I'd seen so many years ago reared up from every corner, aimless in their direction and shaking violently, fingers twitching and writhing as they tried desperately to find something to pull. I heard the crawling of death down below, making his way up the tree and resting somewhere above me, cackling as he mocks me. I can't stand the confusion, the fog, the pain, the inevitability of the end. I grabbed the bottle and took 2 pills. The fog started lifting, but the hands were still grabbing for anything. I took 4 more. The cackling became muffled, almost muted. The hands started sinking into the ground. He's smashing on the walls, but I can't feel him or see him anymore. He's not able to hurt me now. It all fades to noise, and I am left here, clear-minded, with my phone in my hand, ready to finish the adventures of Izzy and Ellie. I'm gonna go through that door, face whatever is on the side, and do it with Ellie by mine. The way it's supposed to be. But I will tell you this much. For anyone out there who is in their own fog, gripped by the looming figure of death and all his horror, for anyone who has looked into that unending, uncaring void of agony and despair and somehow looked away and onto better things, you are the reason those stars glow in the sky. Every light is a person you love. Every twinkle is their coded message. Just for you. Sometimes it takes years, other times decades, but it will always reach you. Just as mine did. They say you can't defy the natural order. You can't cheat death and you can't run from it forever. Well, Ellie started her defiance at a young age and she's never stopped to look back. That was her true superpower. The ability to defy the odds. It's time I joined her and did the same. Her name was Eleanor, and death followed her.
For once, folks, I think I'm just gonna let this story speak for itself. Embrace this moment, this feeling, and let it wash over you. Memento mori, friends. Memento mori. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out some of our other transmissions. We're adding them regularly, and we'd love to have you as part of the Dusklight family by subscribing, hitting the bell of understanding. It's just a normal bell, but adding stuff like that is nice. Leave a comment with stories you'd love for my many-legged runners to find. Dedication needs to be rewarded, and we thank more and more of our loyal listeners for joining these premieres each and every time. This time we give thanks to Waffle Pie, Haley Clark, Jason and Gamma, our terrifying twosome at every premiere, and Penny Tails Up for giving us their valuable time. I hope we can continue this forward growth and spread our spores to the far corners of YouTube, infecting the airwaves with our intoxicating presence. When we hit 500, we've got something wonderful planned. And, one last time, listeners, close your eyes and breathe with me. Remember, no matter how bad things are, how cruel people can be, and how heavy your shoulders may feel with the weight of the world bearing down on them, Dusklight will always be here to lift the load and provide you with some respite. Drink some water, watch a nature documentary, eat some takeout, and sleep on the cool side of the pillow. Choose to start each day and end each day with some kindness in your heart. You matter. You are loved. Every day is another chance. I'll see you again when the sun sets and dusk enters the station.